What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're up for another round of Wednesday afternoon worship. We talked about the Green Faith last week, and last week we brought up the fact that the Green Faith has no obedience, and that sucks. And it also sucks that there's a lot of other deities and a lot of other pantheons. I specifically mentioned the Great Old Ones that do not have obediences. Come to find out, I wasn't entirely correct on that. Most of them do not, that is true, but one of them does, and today we're going to talk all about him. Which great old one, you ask? Well, of course, we are referring to the Unspeakable One, him who is not to be named the King in Yellow, or as my players know him from a recent in-person game, the Man in the Yellow Hat. Today we're talking about Hastur. Hastur is one of the great old ones, and he appeared first in Bestiary 4 alongside Bokrug and Cthulhu. But as of the strange Aeons adventure path, where his obedience comes from, we have a whole bunch more. And it's pretty apparent that that's really popular amongst the nerds in general, because as of Starfinder, one of the outer gods, Nyarlathotep, has reached core deity status, which is super exciting for yours truly, and thus in a Starfinder game that, well, I'm recording this on a Friday, but I'm jumping on next Monday, aka 2 days ago, I will be playing an operative in service to the Crawling Chaos, the Black Pharaoh Nyarlathotep himself, and you guys can catch that over on the Interplanar Crossroads. They also are the channel's patrons, so of course, as always, this episode was brought to you by those guys. Check them out. If you guys want to see this channel do a bunch of super crazy awesome stuff, and I really want to do super crazy awesome stuff in the name of gaming, the number one way to do that in 2017 is with patronage. The link is in the description if you might be interested in helping your boy. That goes double in these trying times in what could very well be the final days of net neutrality. I've already talked about what net neutrality can do to everybody, gamer or otherwise, at a video you can find right here. However, again, this is still a super big deal. It affects every single solitary person who can hear me speak. And frankly, if net neutrality goes away, the government has the ability to step on our First Amendment rights. And I don't know about you, but I'm not about that. So please, if you would, follow the links at the top of the description. Help our voice be heard. Now that we're done with all that, let's go crazy. Hastur is an entity of the Cthulhu mythos, first appearing in Ambrose Bierce's short story, Haita the Shepherd, in 1893, as a benign god of shepherds. He's briefly mentioned in Lovecraft's The Whisperer in Darkness. Previously, Robert W. Chambers had used the name in his own stories to represent both a person and a place associated with the names of several stars. In Bierce's story, Hastur is much more benevolent than he would later appear across nerddom in general. We're talking things anywhere from Stephen King to the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, all the way up to League of Legends. I don't want to spoil any of his story here, so we're going to dive straight into Strange Aeons, where we will speak about his story in the wide world of Pathfinder. Like I said, this does come from the Strange Aeons adventure path, which, from what I've read of it, seems to be a super fun adventure path that actually brings a little bit of horror to the tabletop setting. I highly recommend it, and we're going to do our very best to not spoil anything here as we dive in. According to legend, the human civilization that first made contact with Hastur existed long before humanity ever rose up on Galerion. In a distant time, on a distant world whose name has been long forgotten, 3 great cities ruled from 3 different shores of the vast lake of Hali. The first of these cities, which I'm sure I'm going to horribly mispronounce, was Ithil, a place ruled by and for the aristocracy, where anyone and everyone could and did revel in their hedonistic nature. The second city, Alar, was home to anarchists bound together with nothing other than the fact that they were super jealous of their hedonistic neighbor. The third and final city was called Carcosa. This empty city was built by unknown hands and had been abandoned by humanity at large. It was old and in ruins before people laid the first foundations of Alar or Ithil, and those few who visited Carcosa returned mad, distraught, and prone to self-destruction if they even so much as showed back up. The people of Alar coveted the wealth and comforts of the people of Ithil, yet they could do little to earn or take from Ithil what they desired. And so, one day long ago, the armies of Alar besieged the empty city of Carcosa in the hopes that they could harness whatever source of power that so fully emptied the minds and ruined the souls of those who ventured within. By that next morning, the city of Ilar and its population had vanished without a trace. When news of Ilar's vanishing reached Ithil, the decadents of that city took note, yet they didn't really care. If anything, they rested easier knowing that their potential enemy had been wiped from the face of existence. Time passed and memories of Ilar and Carcosa faded, and as the people of Ithil grew even more hedonistic, as if that was even possible, all but the most eccentric of their scholars forgot the legends of the sister cities of Ithil. The city's rulers fought and schemed for control of civilization. Then, during a masked ball thrown by Queen Casilda in an attempt to secure her rule, a stranger appeared wearing a pallid mask. When asked to remove his mask, the stranger revealed that, in fact, he was not wearing a mask and he had come to announce the end of Ithil's dynasty. Madness quickly swept through the city, and with the dawn, the city had vanished as well. Only the ghost city of Carcosa remains. On modern-day Golarion, this story has been turned into a play called The King in Yellow, and bards play a special role in Hastur's faith because they're the most capable of spreading the word of Hastur and the attention of Carcosa by performing this play. As with most of the Great Old Ones, Hastur is imprisoned on a distant world, yet unlike most of the bound Great Old Ones, Hastur can manifest himself on other worlds as long as the light from the strange star in the sky of his prison world shines upon the targeted portion of the second world which he wishes to travel to. He requires the assistance of powerful magic to manifest this avatar, known as the King in Yellow, or again, as my players knew him, the Man in the Yellow Hat, and thus no one knows for certain what Hastur looks like because the Great Old One has been imprisoned far longer than mortal life has ever existed. His manifestation as the King in Yellow is a man-shaped figure draped in tatters of yellow cloth and saffron robes, yet nothing of what hides beneath them can be seen, except in the nightmarish glimpses of the truly unfortunate that we shall discuss in a minute. When Hastur does manifest in a world as the King in Yellow, a significant city inevitably falls to Carcosa. A visitation from the King in Yellow doesn't guarantee this. You assume something like a party of adventurers or martyrs might be able to prevent such a doom from happening, at least for a time, until Carcosa's attention is once again drawn to the world in question. The cultists of Hastur are masters of subtle enchantments and hidden sorceries that they can use to trick unsuspecting victims into opening the way for the King in Yellow. Hastur does not actively seek new worshippers, but he doesn't actively dissuade those who become obsessed with him either. Hastur's symbol, the notorious yellow sign, is often used in conjunction with this magic, and those who find the yellow sign, again we'll talk about that in a second, may become doomed to host the King in Yellow in their own minds and flesh, slowly transforming into eldritch monsters. Hastur has no temples anywhere on Golarion. Instead, veneration of the Great Old One is held in the manors and estates of the rich during galas, masked balls, and other decadent festivities. Public halls for performances or concerts may find themselves unknowingly hosting worship of Hastur, for his followers are nothing at all if not cunning in hiding their true nature, because of course if their true nature comes out, all the paladins are kicking in the door and smiting everybody away. Only those who ascend up the ranks of society in one of these cults ever really become truly aware that they've joined a cult of Hastur. And at the point where somebody ascends so high up that they realize what they're actually doing, if they balk at the truth and decide they don't want to worship the King in Yellow, they find themselves inevitably sacrificed to him at the earliest opportunity. Hastur is chaotic evil. His areas of concern are decadence, disorder, and nihilism. His domains are chaos, evil, ruin, and void, and his subdomains, dark tapestry, language, stars, and wards. His favored weapon is the rapier, and his symbol is the yellow sign. He has no sacred animals, and his sacred color, represented all throughout the faith, is yellow. His obedience requires us to spend an hour in absolute stillness, meditating in an area surrounded by rich furnishings and dressed in elegant and expensive clothing and jewelry. The total combined value of the clothing and the furnishings of the area within 30 feet of you must be at least 1,000 gold per character level, and magical items don't count in determining the overall value of stuff, unless of course your magic sword is made out of like solid platinum, in which case the value of the platinum itself is the only thing that counts, not the enhancement bonuses. Alternatively, you can perform this obedience in the presence of an active yellow sign. If you know them, you must silently recite lines from the King in Yellow as you meditate, otherwise you can simply concentrate on nothingness. This obedience grants us a +4 profane bonus on all performed checks. We've flipped through the boons, and honestly, in exchange for the fact that eventually you're going to need to be surrounded with 20,000 gold worth of non-magical, really expensive things, this can be really hard to pull off in exchange for not a whole lot of benefit. So we're going to go ahead and not talk about this, push it to the side. You can take it for flavor. You can take it on an NPC if you want to GM a Hastur-themed campaign. Then it's not bad. For the players, though, by and large, we can probably skip this. So instead, today, we're going to slide on over to Bestiary 4, and we're going to discuss how we use Hastur in an encounter, because yours truly has, and I think I have a lot to say about it. So before we get down to that, let us talk about this Yellow Sign. Yellow Sign is a high-level spell, and one of the obedience boon paths will grant you the ability to make a yellow sign, but a lot of times it's not that useful unless you're the GM. Once per day, however, as a free action, Hastur can touch any solid surface and inscribe the yellow sign upon it. Once inscribed, the yellow sign remains for a year, but it's active only on nights when the light from Hastur's distant world shines in the night sky as a star. Any creature that looks upon an active yellow sign, aka any creature with his obedience that decides to go that route, must succeed at a DC 40 will save to avoid being dominated by Hastur as Dominate Monster. Whether or not the save is successful, the creature doesn't have to save against that yellow sign again for 24 hours. While the creature is under this domination effect, if the creature's charisma drain plus charisma damage ever equal its charisma score, and I understand that to mean if I had 40 charisma and took 20 charisma damage, the total drain would equal 20 and my score would equal 20, the creature in question immediately dies and allows Hastur to manifest physically at the location of its corpse, as if the victim had donned Hastur's tattered robes, which we'll talk about in a second. A yellow sign can be removed with Dispel Chaos, Dispel Evil, or Erase, any of which requires the caster to succeed at a DC 35 caster level check. Mage's Disjunction automatically removes the yellow sign. So coming from a guy who used all the great old ones in an Eldritch campaign not too terribly long ago, I gotta say, as far as combat goes, Hastur will fall short in high-level play. That, of course, is totally nixed out if we're on like a 15-point or 20-point buy. In which case, I'm sure this is a wonderful, final boss for your game that's probably going to wreck the party. Hastur's strengths, however, lie in his ability to set up a dungeon. Assume he's had basically all of eternity to wander whatever dungeon it is you want to use, whether that be the Tomb of Horrors, which I did put Hastur in, along with some drow and stuff. It was a lot of fun. Or maybe something you come up with, anything in between. What you do is you just slap yellow signs everywhere. It's even more fun to put the yellow sign in something like the middle of a book or another integral part of a puzzle that the player has to interact with to solve and therefore has to force themselves to see that yellow sign. When Hastur uses his Nightmare spell-like ability on a creature that has seen the yellow sign, he also afflicts that creature with horrifying dreams tinted with a nauseating yellow color and thick with overwhelming sensations of decadence, shame, and entropic disorder. In addition to the effect of the Nightmare spell, the target must also succeed at that magic number, a DC 40 will save, or be compelled to seek out a yellow sign, throwing all of his resources and actions into that obsession. While obsessed, the target takes a -4 penalty on will saves, saving throws against symbol spells, concentration checks, and wisdom-based skill checks. The obsession effect ends immediately after the victim looks upon a yellow sign. As if that wasn't enough, Hastur is immortal. If he is slain, the robes that drape his frame suddenly drop to the ground, as if whatever shape supported them had suddenly ceased to exist. The robes themselves remain inanimate on the ground, but any humanoid creature that touches them must succeed on a DC 40 will save to resist a sudden urge to put the robes on. And I did have a player do this. She was kind of one of those players, I'll say. We didn't even get to the will save. She just ran up, grabbed the robes, threw them on. Putting on the robes is a full-round action that does provoke attacks of opportunity, but once a creature has donned Hastur's robes, the creature immediately perishes and the body is destroyed. In its place, Hastur lives again as if brought back via true resurrection. If the discarded robes are not donned within 24 hours, they fade away, leaving behind a faint yellow stain. In this case, Hastur can't manifest a physical body again until the conditions are right, aka Elder Mythos stuff, or until an unwitting cultist or fool calls him forth once again. As a swift action, Hastur may reveal to one adjacent creature the true shape beneath his robes. The creature must succeed at a, yeah, you guessed it, DC 40 will save, or be paralyzed for 1d4 rounds and take 1d4 points of wisdom drain at the end of its turn. Each round the paralysis persists, though the revelation is too awful for memory to retain. As if the will saves weren't high enough, now we can paralyze people, set up the coup de grace, as well as drain the wisdom score, make the will saves for when we show them the yellow sign all the better. Hastur's primary attack is called the Tattered Lash. He attacks with long strips of his robes with a reach of 40 feet, and they're treated as primary natural slashing attacks. Bleed damage from the Tattered Lash stacks with itself up to 10d6 points of bleed damage. Honestly, I think bleed should just stack with itself anyway, considering how easy it is to remove it, that being a DC 15 heal check or any healing whatever. Hastur treats insane targets as if they were flat-footed when he attacks with these weapons, which is super important because as we look up, we see that Hastur does have sneak attack up to 10d6. All of the great old ones have an aura called Unspeakable Presence. Hastur's reaches out to 300 feet, and if you fail a DC, 40 will save against the Unspeakable Presence, you are affected with a random insanity. If a creature is already insane, and if we're pulling out of horror adventures or playing any kind of Elder Mythos game whatsoever, you probably already are, the creature instead becomes confused for as long as it remains 300 feet away from Hastur. Hastur may use Wish as a spell-like ability, but he can only do so to grant the wishes of other creatures and only once per creature. Without fail, the results of these wishes serve somehow to advance Hastur's agenda, maybe teleport somebody out of a dungeon and directly into a room full of yellow signs or anything crazy like that. I wish I had read Hastur's entry a little closer before I used him in a campaign because Hastur, like I said, is a little less good in an open combat situation than he is as almost an NPC, just interacting with the party, giving them wishes that eventually turn against them, turning them insane, turning them into his cultists. He's still a lot of fun, and again, if we're 15 point buy, 20 point buy, you're gonna wreck your party's face probably, but in a high-powered game, again, especially with a lot of paladins, even that CR 29 isn't really gonna stop anybody who's been essentially training their whole life to hit this guy. So my advice, if you want to use Hastur as a boss or NPC in your campaign, it's perfectly good, it's a whole lot of fun, but make sure Hastur doesn't actually hit the board until you are 100% sure that Hastur is going to be able to win, because that is more in flavor for a chaotic evil god, and also most of Hastur's really powerful spell-like abilities only come into play outside of combat. It can be really hard to hey, look at this yellow sign while all the paladins are spirited charging at you. That said, if we're considering using Hastur as an end of campaign boss, look at that will save. Look at that DC 40 that we can spit out here. The paladins probably have a high enough save to shrug that off, but something more along the lines of a fighter, an alchemist, anybody who hasn't really put a lot of points in their will saves, or maybe even somebody who's using a non-min-maxed animal companion, which we explain how to build here, can quickly find a lot of the tools of their party, best becoming ineffective, or at worst, turning against them. So if you guys ever used Hastur in a campaign, or for that matter, any of the great old ones, if so, let me hear about it, because I'm not entirely sure. I played entirely to the T when I used Hastur, and I'd love a little bit of advice to round out my craft. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. Can you guess when the next episode of Wednesday Afternoon Worship might drop? I'll leave it to you guys.